What is going on, everyone? Badger here. Should have liked and sub, and let's get into this. Part two of Irwin's 10-part. No, that's not a joke. Nerd Wars actually has a 10-part series, starting from right before of GamerGate, the first one, to everything that's happened and possibly where it's going to go. So this is the second one, the woke takeover of video games, and this sort of, I think this is useful for everyone. This goes over how the first GamerGate, what that even was, how it's related to this, and how it sort of maybe kind of didn't end. So let's see. Here we go. The woke takeover of video games, the GamerGate 2 report. Of course, this is from geeksandgamers.com, which actually some pretty decent articles. I'm starting to add that to my list of websites that I check for news. Sweet Baby Inc. detected has rekindled the media's outspoken hatred of gamers, finally giving us a long sought after sequel, GamerGate 2. The woke mind virus has thoroughly infected gaming through media outlets and nonprofits, social engineering the industry. This was primarily carried out through accusations of harassment and a lack of inclusion for underrepresented groups. As our culture raced down the slippery slope, the gaslighting media went from nudging society towards their goal to sledgehammering the Overton window wide open. The social engineers seem to be taking only small bits of ground each time. In retrospect, our culture experienced a monumental shift in the last decade. At this point, it's almost certain that games journalists will be labeling every bit of gamer backlash as GamerGate 2. So it's important to remember where we started so that we can see how far we've come in the last decade of the culture war. You'll quickly realize that GamerGate 2 is the exact same thing as GamerGate 1, but now everyone is a different gender. Too Long Didn't Read of Too Long Didn't Read. Seriously, you really don't want to trust Zoe Quinn. Zoe Quinn and the Five Guys. So, you're transported back to 2012 and 2014, in between those 2 years, and indie games are all the rage. And just like indie culture, the hipsters have taken over. Walking simulators, wacky platformers, narrative adventures. Some of them are barely even games. And it's the perfect target for the talentless woke grifters. Zoe Quinn's Depression Quest was being considered for Steam's Greenlight program back when Steam didn't let every single animated hentai novel onto its platform. As the legend goes, the message board was not happy about Zoe appearing to get special treatment for what many considered to be a non-game. According to Zoe, the forum users were harassing her. This is a common tactic. The forum users were harassing her and her game. Or could it be? Was it completely fabricated by Zoe? Was she just being a crybaby? Regardless of the truth, Anita Sarkeesian and the Women in Games cartel became very upset with gamers. And here's a little update of Anita Sarkeesian marrying herself in a wedding-themed birthday party for her 41st. That's nice. The subsequent media scolding was incessant, but in August of 2014, the Zoe post was released into the culture war. Iran Joni, the ex-boyfriend of Zoe Quinn, posted a lengthy and detailed diatribe about the alleged psychological abuse he endured from Zoe, all while she allegedly cheated on him with the Five Guys. Not the burger company, although that is a fun joke, but 5 other men in the industry. In this post-breakup manifesto, Iran included considerable number of private messages and as proof private messages as proof of his accusations. Out of the 5 guys, 3 of them are specifically named, all connected to the games industry, allegedly an indie game award judge, a married indie game dev who was her employer, and a games journalist for her Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun. She apparently slept around the entire industry. After being attacked for over 4 years, the gamers and internet sleuths pounced on this story. Was Zoe sleeping around to get awards and positive coverage for Depression Quest? Is that why this non-game was receiving so much attention and praise? The dreadful games journalist Nathan Grayson had even written a few articles that included Zoe, her non-game, and a failed YouTube game jam show. Is it a bombshell revelation that shook Yeah. Is it a bombshell revelation that shook the foundations of the industry to its core? No, but it was certainly enough to ask questions about journalistic integrity and potential collusion. Kotaku's stance was that the relationship with Grayson started a couple of weeks after the article, so it was perfectly ethical. Iran clarified that he didn't believe that they were in a relationship at the time the articles were written. And then there's just more receipts. Ethics in games journal. And this comes into the crux of the whole thing of that the weird little twisted incestuous relationship between the games journalist and the legacy games journalism media that were supposed to be covering them. The games journalists had been breathlessly awaiting any baseless accusations they could print against men in the industry. So the industry gave the same treatment to Zoe Quinn and her well-resourced accusations, right? Absolutely not. The chat boards locked down and the games journalists became white knights for Zoe. The gamers and internet sleuths dared to defy the games journalists and kept digging. In the meantime, allegations of harassment and threats continued against figures like Anita Sarkeesian of Feminist Frequency. So gamers were attacked and censored even more strongly by the industry, which created a Streisand effect. Noticing a pattern because the same thing just happened. And thanks to one guy from Firefly, hashtag GamerGate was eventually born. Assume he means Joss Whedon. Did the gamers win? No. Games journalists announced the death of gamers and declared that it was time to move on from the identity. But were the gamers right? Was this some wild conspiracy? Kinda. At least there appeared to be collusion among the media in regards to coverage of Zoe Quinn, which was exposed by Milo Yiannopoulos of Breitbart, leading to many of the accusations of Gamergate being alt-right and getting Trump elected. And of course, that's what anything that they don't like, they call alt-right. The saga continued, including Stellar Blade, they claim is alt-right. The saga continued as Zoe Quinn disrupted a game jam for women hosted by the fine young capitalists. This brought 4chan to the rescue and led to the creation of Vivian James, an absolute heartwarming story. As expected, the social justice warriors were furious. After this incident, the gamers were vindicated. Zoe Quinn was a manipulative sociopath and a liar. Apparently, the Zoe files had been confirmed and 4chan were the good guys. Allegedly. The woke invasion. As the time passed, that incestuous pile of woke developers, game media, and nonprofits grew and grew. It perfectly highlights the slippery slope of letting the crazies take even an inch. As their power grew, so did their allegations. The Women in Games cartel began using hashtag #MeToo allegations to take over the industry, a tactic we just saw thanks to the D-Files, that was used extensively by Jennifer Lee to take over Disney Animation and oust John Lasseter. And probably used in other ones. And I'm not saying there aren't legitimate Me Too cases, but the point is it was very quickly taken and used as a tool to out industry vets that they were threatened by. And yes, many of them were male and pale and thus stale. Right. So the Women in Games cartel began using hashtag #MeToo allegations to take over the industry, eventually resulting in the death of a man. Yes, he unalived himself. How the hell did we get here? By the end of 2014, Anita Sarkeesian was doing the media rounds to warn the world about Gamergate. She even appeared on the Colbert Report. In 2015, Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn spoke at the United Nations and their harassment allegations, demanding more moderation and inclusion, of course. And yet that same year, a Gamergate journalist event had to be evacuated after multiple bomb threats, highlighting that the alleged harassment campaign wasn't as one-sided as the Women in Games always portrayed it. GamesIndustry.biz summed up the state of the industry at the time with an article entitled "Women in Games, Everyone Needs a Hero." The gender imbalance in video games business and tech in general is not news to anyone, but to professionals following the industry, it's become crystal clear that promoting diversity across the board, not just gender, is one way to safeguard its future growth. In 2016, Donald Trump rose to prominence and pushed the woke mob of mentally ill and depressed sociopaths to the point of derangement. And yeah, Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing on multiple levels. It has broken many people, and they're not coming back. The woke mind virus mutated into a far more virulent or virulent form. Just a couple of months after his election, Zoe Quinn was non-binary. Somehow GamerGate was blamed for getting Trump elected. By 2017, the game's journalists were worried to death about some mythical alt-right boogeyman and were upset, and they still are. Some mythical alt-right boogeyman and were obsessed with the PewDiePie pipeline. Disney even severed ties with PewDiePie for being too edgy. Yeah. We were blessed in 2018 with the hilarious disaster that was Billy Hunters. According to the hacks at Polygon, the Billy Hunters website described the collective as a vigilante hit squad of elite female gamers who will enter CSGO games when called upon. The campaign blew up after a disastrous debut live stream and suffering their own accusations of homophobia and harassment. This same year, the Battlefield 5 trailer was ratioed for having a disabled woman fighting in World War II. It's hilarious. Battlefield 5, if you've all the campaigns. They're all from underrepresented groups. And the Women in Games Harpies had finally captured AAA shooters after invading Call of Duty Ghosts in 2013. And 2013 is a magical year, you'll find, where that is really where across the board things started doubling down. And then, of course, rampancy happens and it doubles down, it doubles down, it doubles in size every couple years. The extortionists were so brazen that in 2019, Anita Sarkeesian openly strong-armed CD Projekt Red in an attempt to convince them, oh God, I remember this, them to hire her as a consultant. This is what professional grifters like Sweet Baby Inc. CEOs Kim Belair call risk assessment. And the consultants are there to mitigate the risk of being canceled by the leftist mobs on social media. It's the precursor to a sensitivity reading. It's a racket. It's a fucking racket. I'll say it. He has to say allegedly. I'll say it. It's a racket. It's going in there and be like, boy, it'd be a shame if the left mob that I could send after you at any moment came after you for this. You should probably hire someone to do sensitivity reading, and then you should hire someone, me or my friends, to further enlighten that. Otherwise, boy, it would be a shame, because if you don't, well, yeah, that's what they do. And this, of course, more receipts. Somehow Zoe Quinn returned. A few months later in 2019, several men in the video game industry were accused of sexual harassment and assault. Zoe Quinn jumped on the bandwagon and alleged that Night in the Woods developer Alec Holowka had sexually assaulted and manipulated her during the relationship. This allegation was the reverse of the Zoe post, particularly in regards to the complete lack of evidence or corroboration. Alec could have been guilty of the accusations. However, considering Zoe's past behavior and the fabrication of so many #MeToo allegations, it was a bit too convenient and suspicious. It's worth noting that ending of the Zoe post, it ended. Regardless, the media and Women in Games cartel ran with allegations, smearing the names of these men through the media with social media allegations as proof. Similarly to Depression Quest and other narrative games, Night in the Woods showcased the team's neuroses, anxieties, and troubles. Like so much of the video game industry, Alec was mentally ill. So after having his name dragged through the mud by games journalists and being fired from the company, Alec Holowka committed unaliving himself. This is exactly the sort of tactic Zoe Quinn accused GamerGate of using on her during the United Nations presentation several years earlier. A lot of this involves trying to push people to unalive themselves. Were the Women in Games and games journalists finally blamed for what they had done? Absolutely not. GamerGame was blamed for Alex unaliving himself. The media acted like they did nothing wrong and obfuscated the truth by writing headlines just mentioning that Alec had died, completely hiding their role in the controversy that caused him to do what he did. And now in 2024, while researching Sweet Baby Inc., come on, Erwin, bring this home. Now in 2024, while researching Sweet Baby Inc. and the gender of Chris Kindred, I stumbled upon a company and nonprofit called Weird Ghosts and Baby Ghosts. They are far left lunatics funding and sponsoring indie developers to make woke games with woke employees. And in their most recent announcement, Sweet Baby Inc. was part of their third cohort to receive $25,000 in funding. I posted the link and a few screenshots on the website, on Twitter, and left. So we'll have the link to this article below in the description. When I checked my DMs later, I learned that I had unknowingly stumbled into GamerGate. Hat tip to Northern Nikki. The Weird Ghost website was torn down for the night, and I had been blocked on Twitter. Wow, what sort of trouble had he started? This when Erwin became a real games journalist. The founder of Weird Ghosts is the non-binary sister of Alec, the aforementioned man who was driven to unalive himself. She is using Alec's inherited company that she got after he unalived himself through the Me Too accusations from Zoe Quinn. Is it all coming together now? It is for me, at least. Jesus. She is using Alec's inherited company, Infinite Ammo, to fund Weird Ghosts, which is in turn now funding Sweet Baby Inc. with a $25,000 grant. The company also pushes DEI, pronoun fluids, and anti-capitalism. And because of his tweet with 4K impressions, probably no more by now, as far as Erwin could tell, they scrubbed their website. The Streisand effect has been injected directly into his veins. The other co-founders of Weird Ghosts, Ginny Faber, was the co-founder and executive director of Dames Making Games. Zoe Quinn claims to have co-founded the organization, but seems to have just drunkenly inspired it. Ginny also had a falling out with the organization after not being paid for a decade of work, which appears to have left the organization in ruin. And that's how I learned that GamerGate 2 is exactly like GamerGate 1, but they're a little different gender now. And now stumbling upon this Weird Ghost company led me even further down the rabbit hole, forcing me to finally research the history of this important battle in the culture war. I made more and more connections. I realized that Sweet Baby Inc. and Weird Ghosts were just the tip of the iceberg. I began this journey wanting to expose the game's journalists and woke gifters, but in the process, I accidentally became a games journalist. Well, Erwin, be careful when fighting monsters that you don't become one yourself. Ooh. So, a day before my first article was published, like a divine sign, Kotaku imploded. We are the media now. The customer always wins. The next article in this series, remember, it's a 10-episode series. Next article in this series will explore the declining state of modern AAA games, how they've been slowly infected with wokeness. The tension has been building for a decade, preparing us for the backlash against games like Spider-Man 2 and Suicide Squad. Video games have a huge audience, and as the agenda is pushed into more mainstream games, an enormous number of people have been exposed to the hideous ideology of the far left. The far left, yes. Not only are they attacking gamers as a culture and identity, but they've been attacking their customers. And in a fight between company and customer, the customer always wins. As the gamers stand up and flex their muscles, it's important for all of us to join in and do our part to take back our culture and society from these mentally disturbed, gender fluid creeps. And there's Brutus. Everyone doing their part. It's almost at 400,000, that curation list. Here, let you know your thoughts right here. I will continue to cover this, and I will 100% have this entire article linked down below in the description. So shout out to Erwin from Nerd Wars. You can see us every Friday now, right before Friday Night Tights on Nerd Wars channel. We do a quick little nerd rage pre-gaming for Friday Night Tights, and then every Saturday from 10 a.m. All right, fine, 1 o'clock Eastern. We do Nerd Rage on his channel. It's a lot of fun. So go over and tweet to Nerd Wars. Let them know what you think of this. Make sure to like, share, and sub to this channel, though. Thank you if you've done that. We're almost at 3,000. Almost. 100 or so away. What's almost between friends? Make sure to like, share, and sub if you've done that. Thank you. If you're going to do that, thank you. And, well,
bye.